Okay, so here are some examples we went over in class in case you missed class or just need to review something again. The question is, given the figure below, and line L is parallel to line M. So these two lines are parallel. The question is, which angle is congruent to angle Y? Well, here's angle Y. And what you have to catch is that we have a transversal with QR. So we have four types of angles: corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, and then consecutive interior. Those are our four types of angles. The thing is, of those, only alternate interior, alternate exterior, and corresponding are congruent. 3 and 3 and Y are consecutive interior, but they're going to be supplementary, not congruent. It's going to be Y and angle 4 that are congruent. Now this problem, if you missed class, is actually out of an ACT test. So that's why I decided to go through it, because I was like, okay, we're doing geometry material with ACT stuff. Let's cover ACT. Okay, these 6 problems we covered in class. I handed them out and groups worked on them. You had to solve for X and Y. So, X and Y. Well, X is adjacent to 70. They're a linear pair, actually, so they're going to be supplementary. So that's going to be 110. But then X and Y are corresponding, so it's also 110. Okay. Number 12, X and 115 are vertical angles, actually, so this is 115. And then X and Y again are corresponding, so they're also congruent, 115. Number 13, this guy and this guy are corresponding, so they're going to be congruent. So if he's a right angle, he's a right angle, so he's 90. And these form a linear pair, so they have to also be congruent, so they're 90. Okay, Y is. Number 14, Y and 100 are adjacent angles, so they're a linear pair as well that form a line and they're adjacent. So this means Y and 80 have to be 180, so Y is going to be 80, so 180 are. And then Y and X are going to be alternate interior, so they're going to be congruent, so 100 degrees. For 15, X and 120 are going to be consecutive interior angles, so they're going to be supplementary. So if this is 120, this has to be 60 to be supplementary. And then if those two are opposite angles that are consecutive, or that are congruent, I mean they're vertical angles, sorry, see that. They're vertical angles, so they're opposite and congruent. And then number 16, 130 and X form a linear pair, so they're going to be supplementary. So if this is 130, this has to be 50. And if that's 50, alternate exterior angles, that means those have to be congruent as well, also 50. Okay. All right. See the terrible old, cheap desk we have here down in our basement. So these guys in solving for X, I'm just going to set it up. The algebra part I'm not worried about. But solving for X here, these two angles are a pair of alternate interior angles. Alternate interior angles are congruent, so 80 has to equal 5x minus 15. Okay. Number 8, these guys are a pair of corresponding angles, so they're going to be congruent. So if they're congruent, they're equal. Okay. And then number 9, this is a pair of alternate, or sorry, not alternate, but same side interior. They're not congruent, but they're on the same, or they're, sorry, consecutive interior. They're not congruent, but they're on this, they're inside each other and they're the same side, so they're going to be supplementary. So they have to add to 180 and solve. Okay. And last but not least for this section, last thing, one proof. Okay. So the thing with these proofs are, they all come down to basically finding a pair of congruent angles. Okay. So we have to go through a whole mess of stuff to get there. So what it helps to do for these is to sometimes, especially if you got the ability to do this, highlight the ones you're trying to prove congruent. I'm trying to prove angle 1 and angle 2 are congruent. Okay. So the bigger question is, okay, are there any angles that are congruent that I could use? And then if there are, use those to get to those two angles. So looking at angle 1, well, I know that L and M are parallel. Okay. So are there any angles that angle 1 is congruent to? Well, it's congruent to angle 3. It's also congruent to angle 4. Now, I know that 1 and 3 and 4 are congruent because 1 and 4 are a pair of corresponding angles. So off to the side here, I'm going to write angle 1 congruent to angle 4 and just put corresponding. I'm not in the proof yet, but that's COR for CORR for corresponding. I also know angle 1 is congruent to angle 3 because they're alternate exterior angles. Okay. So I can get that 1 is congruent to 3 or 4. Okay. Now the question is, can I get 2 and 2 congruent to anything? Well, let's see here. It might help you to turn your page a little bit or something, or maybe you're good at visualizing this, but hey, 2 and 4 are also alternate interior angles. So angle 2 is congruent to angle 4, alternate interior angles. And I can also say that 2 and 3 are congruent by corresponding angles. So I actually have a couple different ways to get angle 2 to angle 4 or 3, and I have a way to get angle 1 to angle 3 or 4. So basically what I have to do is just make a decision. Do I want angle 1 to go through angle 3 to get to 2? Or do I want angle 1 to go to angle 2, or so angle 4 to get to 2? So we just make a decision. Doesn't matter which one, they're both going to be fine. So let's say for the first one, I'll do angle 4, and then we'll do angle 3. So I'll do that one. I'll do this one in blue when I do angle 4. I'll do this one in red when I do angle 3. So statements, reasons. Okay. So first of all, I know angle 1, or sorry, I'm given L is parallel to M, P is parallel to Q. 2, I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 because angle 1 and angle 4 are corresponding angles. So you either say corresponding angles postulate, or you can just say corresponding angles are congruent. I just tend to do this. Corresponding angles are congruent. That's just the laziest way to do it. 3, I know that angle 2 and angle 4 are congruent because they are alternate interior angles. So you can say alternate interior angles theorem or alternate interior angles are congruent. So alt-int angles are congruent. And now, since I know that angle 1 is congruent to angle 4 and angle 2 is congruent to angle 4, I can say angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 by transitive property. Okay, there we go. Okay, now let's say I want to go through angle 3 instead. I just did through angle 4, I went through angle 3 instead. I'll start all over again. It's a very, very similar problem. 1's still the same. L is parallel to M. P is parallel to Q. Given. Now I know angle 1's congruent to angle 3 by alternate exterior angles. So you can say again alternate exterior angles theorem or alternate exterior angles are congruent. Now there should be like an if parallel, but we're too lazy to do all that. 3, I know angle 2 is congruent to angle 3 because corresponding angles are congruent. And then 4, okay, angle 1 is congruent to angle 2 because they're both congruent to angle 3. That's the transitive property. Okay, and so there are just two different ways to do the exact same proof, those two problems there.